and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with MySecurity Media, and this is our Friday morning episode. Hopefully, you're all safe and sound here in Sydney, but elsewhere, have a nice weekend planned. Our Tech and Sec Weekly, today we're going to be looking at DroneShield, and we've got the CEO of DroneShield, Oleg Vornik, and they've just come out with some record results for the second quarter of 2021. This is an ASX listed company. And, we're going to be joined by Oleg Vornik, the Chief Executive Officer with DroneShield. Oleg, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Good on you, mate. Look, as we mentioned before, it took us a little while to have you on, but anti-drone solutions it just covers every industry, really, doesn't it? In terms of critical infrastructure, law enforcement, defence, and a range of different settings. And you're an ASX listed company, so it's really where to start. Maybe let's start on the results because I think that'll help sort of go to a sort of a macro view of the industry. You're seeing growth. That's the underlying sort of observations you've got in this sector.
Yeah, that's a great starting point, Chris. We have released our second quarter results a couple of weeks ago, which was 7.3 million of cash receipts for the quarter, approximately 6 times our period-on-period increase from the previous year, and that equated to about 9.1 million of cash receipts for the June 6 months, and that is approximately 50% improvement over the entire year in 2020, which in itself was a record year for us. So we're continuing to see record increases in our customer engagement. And importantly, it's not only the quantum of dollars, but also the pedigree of customers such as the Australian Department of Defence, the US Air Force, UK Ministry of Defence, and many others. So we operate in about 120 countries around the world. And importantly, we're also expanding, and we can talk about it a little bit later, into electronic warfare and signals intelligence space, which is adjacent to counter-drone. And approximately 2 million out of the 7.3 million that we received was due to our electronic warfare contracts.
And now, maybe the electronic warfare, is this a new product you've done, or is this an acquisition? How does that work?
It's a new product or new capability that we rolled out in the last half a year or so. So our first contract in that space, approximately $600,000 with the Australian Department of Defence, was awarded in December last year. And as we completed the contract, we received the follow-on $3.8 million contract over 2 years that we are now starting to work on. Counter-drone and electronic warfare are fairly adjacent capabilities in the sense that you can think of spectrum dominance, where drones emit energy as they communicate with their controllers and send back information. But there are a lot of other things in a battlefield that emit energy as well. In fact, most of them do. And we can utilize similar kind of software within our artificial intelligence capabilities to analyze never seen before sort of emissions and classify and track them, which is quite valuable for defense.
Very much. And these are obviously sort of grants you've had. Maybe just talk us through, there's a UTS Collaboration here as well, and that's part of the Defence Innovation Network. Is that where this is coming from as well, allow you to collaborate and do that research? Because again, it's quite a heavy capability. And yeah, how are you building that out? What's the roadmap for you?
The work with the optical artificial intelligence engine, DroneOptID, that we built is the other side of the coin to our electronic warfare work, which is artificial intelligence in the radio frequency spectrum. Right. So we received a grant under the Defence Innovation Network scheme to collaborate with UTS, University of Technology, Sydney. This was last year, and we spent quite some time building this groundbreaking product. So what it effectively enables you to do is to take any camera, optical and thermal capabilities or infrared, and look at a drone even quite far away where it's literally almost a speck, and be able to classify it as such, and then look at its payload and be able to also tell you what kind of drone it is and track it. Now, tracking of drones may seem like an old hat, so people have been tracking vehicles and persons for quite some time. But if you think about tracking a dinner plate size object, which is what drones typically tend to be sized at least in the spectrum of drones that we deal in. And that thing is moving at 20 meters a second. Wide drone against a wide cloud. It's very, very hard to do this reliably, especially in a clouded environment. And this is effectively the crux of our artificial intelligence capabilities. In the optical space, there have been some really amazing breakthroughs in the computer vision technologies over the last several years. So we're utilizing those and overlaying our artificial intelligence skill set that we built together with UTS on that. And we already started selling this product together with the rest of our sensor package to our customers around the world.
Is this part of the immediate response kit, is it?
Immediate response kit consists of our portable counter-drone product. So it is our control, which is radio frequency-based drone sensor. So you basically carry it on you. It's about a radio-sized object, about 1 kg. And then there's a drone gun Mark III, which is a 2-kilo pistol. So it's like the defeat once you detect the drone. So the immediate response kit is our briefcase size solution. You grab it, you open it up, it gives you the detection option, the defeat option, and you can take it kind of anywhere you go. The DroneOpt ID that I referred to earlier is actually part of our fixed site solution. So if you are protecting the base, if you're on a ship, if you are potentially on a vehicle and you have a camera as part of your security package, it might be a camera that you have already, then this is software layer that enables you to give your camera a lot more extra capabilities.
What type of camera are you using? Are you able to say?
We use quite a few. So we've been partnering with Bosch for quite some time, and they have really good value for money cameras, both for security and the high-end defense space as well.
Are you using their mix out of interest?
Yeah, we actually do. Yeah. So if you drive down Sydney roads and you see some of these white mix on the roads, we actually use those as well as the high-end version. They have several varieties. So we also partner with a Australian US company called Tracker Systems, and they do very high-end optical thermal cameras, more for defense applications. So we've done quite a lot of work, especially in the US government agency space, putting our software in those cameras and combining them with the rest of our detection and defeat sensors, like our Drone Sentry X on vehicle radio frequency based detection and defeat system.
Just put a link out. We cover this on our Drastic channel, our drones and robotics channel, and I've just put a link out to the drones related releases. Now, maybe talk us through how these partnerships are working. So you just build this up, and then where's the AI? Are you building the AI itself as well? So you've got the camera, and what type of, I suppose my next question would be, what type of key applications have you got? Is this going to be working for, say, prisons as well, or is it more sort of at a perimeter level, airports? Where are the applications you're seeing best suited? And then I want to move into that sort of the ground-based system. How big is it, and where does it get mounted, and that type of thing? But maybe what are the applications you're seeing, and what range of applications you've got?
Counter-drone market has pretty wide application. So defense is by far the largest set of customers for us today. This is not necessarily because their need is greater than other sectors, but the great thing about defense customers is that when there's requirement, there's usually budget, which is unfortunately not the case for many other types of customers, like prisons, which are usually, unfortunately, cash-starved, and airports, which tend to have pretty long and complex procurement processes. So the key markets are the three I just mentioned. So defense, airports, prisons. And when I say prisons, it's people flying contraband, smuggling drugs, weapons, cigarettes, escape kits into the facilities. Airports, of course, is the Gatwick-style incident when you have to ground all planes when you detect a drone being in the vicinity, because if it gets sucked into an engine or plane, that can ground the airliner with massive casualties involved. We're also seeing nuclear facilities as target customers. So we recently made a sale into that sector in the US that we expect to continue building on. Law enforcement is quite big, so Australian Federal Police has been our customer for some time, and we have law enforcement agencies like, for example, Tokyo Police also happens to be our customer with the Olympics on at the moment, and also law enforcement agencies in the US, intelligence agencies, which I can't go much into, but for obvious reasons, they are our customers as drones represent threat both from surveillance and dangerous payload delivery capability. There are a number of others like border protection, Mexican gangs delivering drugs across borders, and so forth. Yeah. In terms of how DroneOpt ID is used, so three broad types of customer sets and products. So there are portable kind of customers. So that's where immediate response kit comes into play. So your RF patrol and drone gun kind of detection defeat capabilities. We have on the go market. So that's your vehicle and your ship products, and cameras don't necessarily feature in that market that much. But then the fixed site capabilities. So you're protecting a airport, a prison, maybe a defense kind of base. So we recently deployed at US Air Force Grand Forks base in North Dakota, which is the home for Global Hawks, which are larger drones. And the concern there is people flying little drones around the base, potentially either as gathering intelligence or creating nuisance for the larger drones or potential terrorist attacks. So the camera product is in that sort of fixed site market for us.
Now, in terms of the application, in terms of you picking it up, so this is a detection, but also an interception tool with your drone gun as well. Are you finding which one is going the strongest? Is it the detection that they want to pick up first, as you say, the small plate that's a couple of kilometers away, versus then intercepting and taking over or knocking out that drone? How do the two work together? Is it just that your drone gun, is it the Mark III? Is it I take it number 3 being the third form of that? And what's your sort of product roadmap for that? Is that going to be improved?
By revenue split, detection and defeats are about equal for us at the moment. So for the detection, we use multiple sensors. We have been preaching the gospel for quite some time now that layered detection and layered defeat capability is the safest approach, assuming you have the budget. So we use radio frequency, radar, camera, and acoustic as the sort of 4 main pillars for detection, and each one has its strengths and weaknesses. Nothing is perfect. And then we use smart jamming for the defeat, which we find out of various defeat methods. People have been using eagles and lasers and all kinds of nets stuff. We find nets. We find that if you're going to pick one, smart jamming has its own important legal restrictions. So generally speaking, defense and certain law enforcement has ability to jam, but private sector generally, whether it's jamming or other means of bringing down drones, cannot. But given virtually all of our customers are government and majority of them defense, that itself is not an issue.
Yep. I was just asked a question of do they have a mobile capability? That's your incident response kit rather than your fixed. In terms of the radar, is it able to detect anything else? Is it just focused on drones? Is it detecting other movement? You mentioned it's got sort of a radio frequency there as well. Is it detecting sort of for a perimeter security? Is that a potential?
Radar, or any radar, can be thought of as a motion sensor fundamentally. So our three-dimensional radar gives a detection bubble of sort of that perfect hemisphere above the facility. Now you can use it in a number of ways. We train the software model to listen out for drones, because the thing about security system, any security system, is you want it to alert you when there is targeted threat, but at the same time minimize false alarms. So if you have a fire alarm on your house, as an analogy, and it rings every day when there's no fire, you're going to switch it off on day 2 because you're just going to get annoyed. So reduction of false alarms from any detection sensor is a critical part of the job, and there's usually a trade-off, meaning the more sensitive you make the detection system, more prone to false alarms you're going to get. So it's a bit of a science as to how you optimize it. But generally speaking, what we say is that there are already very well developed ground intruder detection systems, and we don't play in that market. We go specialized for drone detection, more sort of airborne type targets, which none of the existing classic perimeter security systems can deal with.
Nice. And what's your limitation? I take it you can pick up any readily available commercial drone and the like. How much effort would the offender, for want of a better word, need to go to avoid detection? Is there anything that they do to change their frequency, I suppose, or are you pretty much covering most of the commercial market?
We often draw an analogy between counter-drone and antivirus market. So a capable antivirus can deal with quite a lot, but you can't really go as far as saying you have complete bulletproof kind of system. So the thing about using artificial intelligence, which is what we do, as opposed to your sort of classic matching against database approach, is the system can think for itself and pick up on never seen before threats, which a classic system cannot. So I think the best way to think of artificial intelligence is if you'd be looking at an object with your own eyes and you've never seen that object before, but you've seen similar objects, you can judge for yourself that it kind of belongs to the same type of threats or types of objects as what you've seen before, even though it doesn't technically match against your recorded database of threats. So similar thing with if a criminal changes the look of the drone, so they make it look like a bird, or they change the radio frequency protocol, so it's a bit different to the sort of the main thing. The idea is through the multi-sensor detection, all powered through AI, at least one or hopefully more sensors are going to say, hang on, this is looking very similar to the sort of threats I've been taught to listen for, and then it will alert the operator. And then the moment you see the visual on your camera, then you can decide what to do. And also the thing about jamming response, unlike say shooting, which we do not do, all of our products are completely safe to humans, by the way. Nothing what we do can harm a human. So the thing about jamming is you can use it without necessarily too much human judgment involved, meaning you certainly would not want to be shooting at anything without a human looking at it first, but you can jam an object if the system decides on its own that it looks remarkably like a drone, and that gives you real-time response.
So it can do it automatically? You can have that set to act autonomously?
Yeah, I mean, when a drone goes at 20 meters a second and you need a fast response, especially if it's barreling down at you with some explosives strapped to it, there's often no time for the operator
to make a decision. Is this where the tracker comes through? I'm just looking at, you've got the CUAS AI-enabled software, and that was released. This is coming out March last year. So you had a very busy 2021. And then with the tracker, is this where that's coming through? And then, yeah, how's 2021 looking for you? It's been a very busy year so far.
Yeah, so we continue refining our technologies. However, the focus now is on continuous software improvement. We have been pretty happy with the effort in the hardware space. Yep. So while eventually there will be improvements in hardware, you always want to make things lighter, faster, smaller, cheaper. At the end of the day, the biggest job for us is to continue making the software more efficient as we sort of push the boundaries of what's possible with artificial intelligence.
Well, I take it that AI, Owen's just asked another good question. Do you have a friend and foe capability? So obviously you can clear, and drones. I take it that capability exists?
Yeah, or whitelisting is probably another way to put it.
Yep, the better way to put it.
Yes, where you can say this is a friendly drone, because of course a lot of our customers use small drones themselves, and you want to be able for them to use drones for whatever missions they have in mind, while at the same time clearing the bad drones out of the picture.
Very good. And what type of integration are you establishing? You know, is it are you able to integrate with other sort of security management software platforms, or are you still standalone?
Our integration is definitely the key here. So if you look at portables, even that is often integrated through what's called battle management systems, which is a fancy word for saying you're integrating into a wider system. So we do integration both ways, and we've done it a number of times now. So we have likes of large defense primes. So for example, our partnership with Thales has been pretty well publicized. So they integrated our kit into their command and control system. And then on the other side, we integrate the likes of Tracker, Zenith, which are drones themselves in our system, and even Bosch cameras, for example, into our command and control. So the idea is the customer doesn't want 5 or 6 disconnected products. They want an ecosystem. So the great thing about what we offer, and we're certainly doing it the hard way, but it pays off in the long term, is if the customer says, DroneShield, I want your ecosystem, so we call it Drone Sentry C2, C2 standing for command and control, then they can adopt that ecosystem. It's like an operating system, kind of like a Mac or Windows, with our and third-party sensors plugged into that, and we have a number of those customers. Or if the customer already has an established, say, Thales or other integrator C2s, then they can just plug our products into that. And you want to go both ways as much as you can, so be integrated in as many things as you can, and for as many things to be integrated into you as possible.
Though I noticed here you're with the SCEC and SOSEC in the US as well. Where are you with the company? You've been around for about 7 years, 5 years listed. You must have you got offices all over the place? But you're manufacturing here in Australia as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe just an overview of the business, how many staff you've got, and then finally on your rollout, how you deal with your client and what training might be involved. So yeah, maybe just an overview of the company itself and how you're standing.
We went through a rapid growth as I think about the last 7 years and 5 years as a listed company. So today we are about 50 people, which is roughly triple where we were a year ago. So wow. Despite the whole pandemic, we continue to rapidly scale up. We have a team of just over half a dozen people in the US, in Virginia, that we continue to grow, which is effectively our channel into the US market, which is an enormous opportunity for us across a number of different segments. And in Australia, we have approximately 40 people, about 30 engineers, and that's split across quite a number of disciplines. So in a way, we are sort of a mini prime ourselves, where we do everything from design and programming of circuit boards to application software to overall product design, our manufacturing in-house, even down to things like brackets. So the history for that is we started in kind of more targeted areas of design and manufacturing, and then we were getting frustrated with this thing and that thing, where stuff that we were getting did not meet our requirements, our customers' requirements for whatever reason. So we just said, we're just gonna do it ourselves. So as a result, we're actually incredibly wide in terms of our capabilities. And so we do our own in-house manufacturing here in Sydney. We're in Haymarket. And also we have a really good relationship with an outsourced established defense electronics manufacturer in Adelaide, who does work for us as well. In terms of our global footprint, we also have a guy on the ground who runs our UK office in partnership with BT, British Telecom, who are our exclusive UK distributor, doing some good work there with the UK Ministry of Defence. And on top of that, we have in-country partners in about 120 countries around the world. So the idea would be that those would be established distribution partners across different defense and security products. Sometimes they even sell drones. So the idea would be they might carry 10, 20, 30 different brands, will be their counter drone brand, and that have established trusted channels to the customer, knowing when bids come out, etc. So they basically represent us on the ground. And before COVID started, I used to travel about 6 months a year on the road, together with our sales and engineering team, training those guys up and participating in conferences. Think about defense security. It's very much sort of game of trust where people want to look you in the eye. So the good thing about the timing, when the pandemic hit us, just at that time, we finally finished our global sort of training and relationship. I mean, you never truly finish, but we've done the bulk of establishing of the relationships and training of the distributors globally.
Yeah, likewise. So you must have been, as you say, on the road 6 months a year, going to pretty much every defence expo there was, and there's a lot of them as well. So well done to even get that far. But as you say, the pandemic with lockdowns has also increased the sort of the surveillance requirements. Police have been deploying drones themselves in relation to COVID. So the drone market obviously is driving the anti-drone market as well, where the anti-drone solution becomes a requirement for any large facility. We talked about defence and law enforcement, but any secure facility is probably likely to be looking at this type of solution now.
Vast majority of our business is not so much your average hooligan with a drone trying to spy in a facility, but more sort of hardened terrorists and proper state-on-state warfare, utilizing small, cheap, consumer and commercial grade drones, sometimes modified in surveillance or attacks. So when I think about our market and why we increased as much as we have over the last several years, it's more around we're seeing the macro tensions both globally and regionally continuing to increase. I mean, not a day goes by that you read an article about China taking more and more proactive stance in their positioning in the region, the Taiwan conflict. A lot of that is based on what you'd call asymmetric warfare as opposed to traditional warfare. So if you are a country deploying its defense forces, nobody these days want to send a missile or send tanks because you're creating an open conflict. So instead, it's more gray zone warfare, the underhanded kind of conflict that we're seeing, which is sort of a war without being a war. So the likes of cyber warfare, the likes of building islands in South China Sea with airstrips and the like. Where DroneShield comes into play in all this is in twofold. So firstly, use of small drones for surveillance and payload delivery is increasing. We've seen examples of that by Russia in the Ukraine conflict, by Azerbaijan in Armenia, and a number of others. The precedents are strongly there, and that's use of drones, anything from very large sort of airplane-sized drones right down to tiny drones like what you buy in a JB Hi-Fi electronics store. So our capabilities go straight to the heart of awareness of the airspace and defeat of such drones. Sometimes, by the way, you may not want to defeat because you give away your presence by defeating the drone. So there's quite a bit of strategy involved. But also with the rise of gray zone and asymmetric warfare, there's a strong theme on spectrum dominance. So a lot of people who are not as familiar with defense consider defense to be all about airplanes and ships and tanks and missiles, which of course it is. But then a lot of it is about things that emit in the spectrum. So you want to make sure that you understand what your adversary has that emits different kind of energy, and at the same time protect yourself against this, and then make sure that you have spectrum dominance on the things that on your side might emit energy. So passive sensors, for example, is becoming quite a big thing. So our electronic warfare capabilities, our current contracts with the Australian Department of Defence play right into that spectrum dominance theme of basically be able to detect never seen before targets and be able to do better analysis of the spectrum.
And I think, as you say, we're talking about, we've mentioned it before, fire ant warfare and, multiple drones and drone swarms. that's where you need sort of an AI, machine learning, able to make decisions on the go in relation to that. So I can definitely see where it's going, and you're gearing up for that. Would you say you've got that kind of capability now in terms of a drone swarm, and can you take out drone swarms?
We sure can. We sure can. So there's quite a lot of science, and drone swarms tend to evolve as they go. So in the early years, drone swarms were literally 5 pilots or 10 pilots, each one piloting a drone, and that's a swarm for you. Then you were able to have one person controlling multiple drones, so they became a more complex swarm. Now we're seeing really cutting edge sort of swarming where there are high value smart drones, so to speak, and low value dumber drones, so to speak, and it may not necessarily be as obvious which ones are which. And the idea is that if you take down one smart drone, then another one takes over. So how do you kind of approach a swarm like that, which doesn't necessarily take instruction from the ground controller, but basically is completely autonomous, and you have to target the sort of leaders of the pack, so to speak, even though they may look exactly the same. So I'd like to think that we are a global leader in the technology in countering swarms, but it's a field that's evolving really rapidly. And by the way, when we talk about drones, I think most people think about objects that fly in the sky, but drones can also crawl on the ground. They can skim on the surface of water, or even swim underwater.
I think it's look. We're definitely going to have you back. I think as you develop, and now I've got a direct link to you now, Oleg. We'll annoy you at least every 6 to 12 months and monitor this. And it's definitely a field that we're hearing a lot more discussions around drone swarms, asymmetric warfare in this particular space as well. And it sounds like you're making some good moves as a company, expanding into electronic warfare as well, which is a natural progression, as you say. So. Very good one to watch. Now, you're listed on the ASX. DRO is your tag, isn't it? Correct?
That's right. That's right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Chris.
So
yeah, we listed about 5 years ago.
Sorry, go.
We listed about 5 years ago, and yes, DRO is our ticker. In fact, we are the only publicly listed counter-drone company in the world. And as far as electronic warfare goes, I mean, the big guys like defense primes surely do it, but I believe in terms of a public listed electronic warfare business, we also happen to be the only one in the world that's publicly listed.
Nice. Well, and it's great to support an Australian company as well, and particularly here in Sydney. So Oleg Vornik, the CEO of DroneShield, thank you so much for your time. We didn't get onto the training aspect. Maybe we'll just close off on that if we can. What's training? How much training is involved in this? Is it just a matter of pointing the gun up and pointing it towards the target? And if it's an AI-driven sort of detection radar, it's doing it most of it itself. So limited training.
There's virtually no training to speak of. The way we explain our products is they're designed to be for a distracted operator. You don't want to give somebody who already has 5 or 6 jobs on, wherever they are in a control room on in the field, yet another job. So the systems are designed to be super easy to use, very intuitive, and also not taking what we call cognitive burden from the operator, so they can go on with their day job, and this is something that just sits there in the background and alerts them in a sort of easy to understand way when something happens.
Great. Well, look, it's an impressive looking thing. That's the Mark III, and again, this looks it's a good product, good looking product. I've always thought, regardless. But look, thank you so much, Oleg Vornik, the CEO of DroneShield. This will go out as an edited standalone session, but thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Chris.